Welcome back to part two. Do you think it's a mental thing in Anthony Joshua's head? And do you see him pulling out? Because he looked away, didn't he, in that stare off yesterday, didn't he?
Well, I've not seen the stare off. So my mate sent me a message, Stuart, today, and he said exactly what you've just said. He says, just something not comfortable about Joshua. Yeah. And there's something so assured about Usyk, which made me feel a lot better because, I wondered what we'd see today or yesterday, whenever it was. And Stuart's a kind of...
came through and that, you mean, like, yeah.
Yeah, and Stuart's a good guy. He's perceptive. So because I don't see a lot of this stuff online, it gives me the odd update and stuff. And because I've been away and I took his word for what I saw. And that's why I said I'm swinging back again, because I didn't like the gap from the last fight to this fight. I thought if they'd have struck straight away and had the rematch, Joshua was done. And then we had that huge gap. Will they walk there? And I just think all this messing about, and you know what I'm about. I like fighters being active. But there's something not... I was saying this to Max at the weekend. We're talking boxing like you do all weekend and most of the weekend anyway. And I said, there's something so apprehensive and lacking confidence. Even the way that Joshua speaks in the corner to fighters, like he did in the Ruiz fight, like he did in the, the Usyk fight. He's always looking for reassurance and absolute detailed technical advice from, McCracken or whoever. I mean, we never heard like Ali turn around to Angelo Dundee, did we, and say, what punch should I throw? What punch should I look out for? What do you want me to do now? And that's a guy who has crisis of confidence, as far as I'm concerned. He's learning on the job, as I keep saying. He hasn't got the full toolbox, mate. And I think his lack of...
He's an athlete, isn't he? That's got him through, hasn't it?
Yeah, he's a very physical athlete. He'd have been a great power lifter, a great rugby union or league player. Yeah, he'd have been a brilliant sprinter. He'd have just been good at all those things. But fighting's a little bit different, isn't he? And yeah, he's been a two-time world champion, etc., etc. And we know that. We're not saying he's not a top-class fighter, but...
Another era, he could have been a Michael Grant. And in Michael Grant, if he'd have been in this era, he could have been a Joshua. Couldn't you remember him, Michael Grant? He was big noise, one of the United States, one of the adult sponsors and that, didn't he? And they bigged him up before he won it, didn't they?
I think that's a really good call, that, actually, what you've just said.
Thank
there.
You very much.
I can see it, mate. Yeah, because he's manufactured to some extent. Obviously, he's got certain physical attributes, but we never really... The one thing that always strikes me about Joshua is he can't sustain pressure for more than 2 rounds at a time. He has to have 3-4 rounds off. I mean, physically, he's absolutely huge. I mean, the amount of oxygen that his muscles must burn is unbelievable. I mean, the guy's absolutely huge. And every time he seems to let a combination go together, he's fucking done for 3 rounds.
Yeah.
You get a vision in your head then, mate, when I was talking to you.
No, you make me laugh. Some of the things you come out with, you're so dry, Julian. You see him making a fool of himself in this one. And I mean, a total disaster. I don't mean him losing a squeaky decision. I'm on about him being really embarrassed,
Yeah, I'll tell you what
a Ruiz job, something like that. So where somebody can say, look, we told you.
I'll tell you what can happen, and this happened. We won't get the outcome, the disqualification, but when Mike Tyson fought Holyfield the first time, and sometimes what happens is when fighters get beat, they look for any excuse they've got. Yeah. And then sometimes they have a rematch, a bit like Tyson and Holyfield the second time. Tyson must have thought, I had my worst night, he had his best night, I can turn this round. And then all of a sudden, Holyfield put it on him again. And you saw what measures Tyson went
back, didn't it?
He had the flashback, and then he was blaming the headbutt, and he did get butted, and he was blaming the headbutt, and then...
You know what he got to go through again, didn't he?
Yeah, you just saw his face, didn't you? Just say, here I go again.
That was I've seen him in trenches, Julian. I saw him in trenches with Buster Douglas, and he didn't come out that so good. Second time, what Holyfield won. They were only 2 times I saw him in trenches. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, and he couldn't really...
Oh, Lennox lost one, but that wasn't really in trenches, was it? They didn't go that many rounds, did they?
He pasted him, didn't he? But he used to it's the typical bully, isn't it? And I think when I say bully, I'm not saying AJ is a bully, you know, in the sense of the word, but he's a typical bully on top fighter in the ring, isn't he? And we see some on top fighters in the ring and they just implode. And that's exactly what he did against Ruiz. I mean, I was watching that recently, actually, the first Ruiz fight. And I've never seen a heavyweight champion look at a referee like that. So glad when he stopped that fight and so accepting of defeat. You know, you look at Larry Holmes when Shavers and Snipes dropped him and he could barely stand. And even Lennox Lewis when he got stopped by McCall, protesting. You know, imagine if they'd counted Fury out in the 12th round against Wilder. Fury would have gone nuts. He would have protested like, what have you done? Gutted. Anthony Joshua against Ruiz. It was, he accepted that. It was like, fine, yeah, fine.
You know Mike Tyson? Like, I'll probably get stick here, but this is what lacks for me in his career, but makes it so he's not top 5 all time. For me, he never really look. He has overcome adversity, but I'm on about in the ring. Have we ever seen him dropped or in trouble and come back from it? No,
never. Tyson was a phenomenal heavyweight who kind of came along.
At his match, he seemed to like shrivel up, didn't he?
Yeah, it's people talk about his life. There's lots of myths around Mike Tyson. I've said this, you know, on previous channels and other channels and things, but Tyson was probably one of the 15 best heavyweight champions of the world. But the people who say he was the greatest ever, it's absolute nonsense, and it's a lack of really.
It's diehards, isn't it?
Diehards. It's that mania. It's that fanatical thing I've talked about before with the Fury fans. It's like it's not representative of what happened. You know, the myth that Tyson knocked everybody out in the first round. No, he didn't. And anybody who gave him any kind of ring craft, even like James Tillis early on, I know it was 19, 20, was learning, but Tony Tucker gave him a good fight. And Tucker was a decent operator.
That's for him, Tucker, didn't he?
Exactly. Razor Ruddock the second time, got dropped a couple of times, but Ruddock gave him a good fight. That's probably the most adversity that Tyson had in his career, was the Ruddock fight.
Smith took him 12, but tied him up, didn't he?
Yeah, he just hugged him it was bizarre, really, wasn't it? He hugged him for the entire fight, apart from the last 15 seconds. But Mike Tyson was a great heavyweight fighter, but there's a lot of mythology around him. It's like
never lost a fight on points, did he, Mike Tyson?
Honestly, the one thing that always makes me just shake my head when the Tysonites come out is when they say he wasn't the same after Custamato passed away. It's like Custamato passed away after Tyson had 8 pro fights in his first year as a pro. Mike Tyson went on to win the heavyweight championship of the world and defend it for 4 years. Yeah, they just make this shit up, don't they? Oh, you know, he wasn't the same after Cuss died. It's like, well, have you read that on some forum?
Yeah, who told you that? Joe Egan.
Yeah, it's nonsense. Tyson was a great fighter, an on-top fighter, but he never overcame adversity and he never come through an absolute grueling fight. And that is a statement of fact.
Yeah, we all got carried away when he fought Frank Bruno. I thought Bruno were going to do him, me.
Did you?
Yeah, we've seen Frank shaped up, fed dossers. And, you know, when you're a young lad and you watch it all, you don't understand all matchmaking and what goes on.
Yeah.
I look back now and I'm like, God,
you do that, don't you?
I was running around like an headless chicken saying, look at the size of Frank. To him, he'll do him. Frank knocks everybody out. You know, running around like an headless chicken thinking I knew something.
I just can't ever forget that. I can't forget that fight with Jumbo Cummings, though, when he got cracked at the end of the first round. And 5 seconds earlier, Frank Bruno would have...
That was his first loss.
Yeah, Bonecrusher Smith knocked him out, didn't he, in the 10th round? And but he was brave, was Bruno.
Jumbo Cummings rocked him, I think he got through.
That's right. Yeah.
Bonecrusher went first loss, and Witherspoon lost every round and then did him at end, didn't he?
Yeah, and Witherspoon looked like he'd been trained at KFC, didn't he, as well? He didn't put much... I think there were issues with Don King at that time for Witherspoon, and he turned up and he was overweight, and he still ultimately turned Bruno over. But Bruno was a brave fighter.
He'd have done better this year, Frank Bruno, wouldn't he?
Yeah. The only thing I had with Bruno was people said he was this devastating knockout artist, and I always think that a true knockout artist knocks people out at the top level.
He didn't knock anybody out at the top level, did he?
Exactly. His shots against, I mean, they were durable guys, but Bone Crusher Smith, Tim Witherspoon, the shots just bounced off those guys, didn't they? Yeah, he didn't dent those guys whatsoever. So it was a heavy puncher. He wasn't a pure knockout artist in the sense of the word for me.
Do you think that Billy Joe Saunders is going to come back, Julian?
I'd like him to come back if he was serious and he got some momentum and got 2 or 3 fights under his belt and had another charge. But if he comes back and he just looks for one big fat payday, then I've no interest in seeing Billy Joe Saunders fade after 5 rounds and pull out. None at all. Good fighter though. I mean, listen, as you know, as a coach or an ex-coach or whatever you want to call me, if you're going to get a young boxer, certainly if you get a young left-handed fighter, amateur, and you want to show him how to box, you show him videos of Billy Joe Saunders, don't you?
Yeah,
he's beautiful. Yeah, just a beautiful fighter to watch. He was so smooth, and I always thought Billy Joe Saunders was so natural in the ring. And just
passed for left half full, a bit like Frankie Gavin kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, he ticks the boxes. He won all the domestic belts, European, etc., Commonwealth, World, but there was just something. It would just disappear for 12 months, wouldn't he? And it's a shame because, listen, do I think he'd have ever beaten Canelo? No. But do I think an active, frequent boxing Billy Joe Saunders would have given a better performance against Canelo? Yeah, I think he would have.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could argue and say, well, he'd have still got the facial damage that he got, but I think he'd have given Canelo probably one of his hardest fights, but he couldn't sustain anything for more than 4 or 5 rounds, could he? Because he was always 12 months out of the ring every time he had an half-decent fight. But yeah, beautiful boxer, fantastic fighter, probably now sat at home with his kids, watching a movie and having a takeaway.
Would you like to see him with Chris Eubank, Julian? Again,
it's a good question. I still think stylistically could beat Eubank. You know.
Yeah.
I just think. Yeah, I mean, it was a close fight the first time, but again, it was a Saunders faded, didn't he? Do you know what it is with Eubank with me? He gets a lot of press and he's a big name. He never really impresses me. He's just one of those fighters when I watch him, really early doors, I thought there might be something here. And then I've watched him and I've just thought, it just doesn't look like a top 4 or 5 best fighter in the world, does he? He's got the name. And
Eubank.
Yeah, he's got the name, but I just don't think he's an absolute true world champion in the sense.
Yeah. Do you see Beefy Smith going into mix against Eubank?
Well, I'd like Beefy Smith to get in the mix just because he gives everything, and he certainly looked energized in his last fight. I thought he looked, obviously he had the Fowler fight, and then he had the last one who's Nate Vargas, and I just thought he looked. First of all, it was great watching him box inside because I like to see a fighter who can fight in the pocket, and it'd be good for him. I mean, he's made plenty of money anyway, but I have no issue with Beefy Smith getting another big payday because the one thing you'd get is he'd turn up to win. He's not somebody who would just turn up for the payday. He'd turn up and he would give it everything. So would he beat Eubank Jr. right now? Probably not. But is he capable of doing it? Yeah, he is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What about John Ryder? What do you think to his situation at the moment?
Where is he? I mean, what is John Ryder even doing? I mean, he had the win against, dubious win against Jacobs, didn't he? And to best of my knowledge, I certainly don't follow it like you do these days, but best of my knowledge, there's nothing in the pipeline for him and he hasn't boxed since. Some fighters just get a few quid and that's enough for them. It's enough for them for whatever reason.
I think he's had a couple of bad decisions. What do you think about Callum Smith? Do you think he's going to make another charge? He's on Joshua undercard, isn't he, for Usyk fight, Saudi? I
mean, time's not on his side, is it? So he's going to have to get something. Light heavyweight, it seems to be quite locked in at the moment, doesn't it? With the champions and the mandatories and stuff. And time's not on Callum Smith's side, so he's going to have to do something spectacular to knock on the door to really state his case. Otherwise, he'll do what everybody else does, and he'll fight once every 6 months, and he'll just, when he does get his next shot, it probably will be a little bit too late for him.
What do you think about it being in? What do you think about it being in Saudi, Julian? This rematch, you know, with all human rights and everything that's been going on. What do you think?
I don't like it. I don't. Yeah, I certainly don't agree with it.
Month to make the fight, and they're not even going to make it in UK after everything Joshua says.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'd never travel anyway, so it doesn't affect me. If Usyk and Joshua was fighting down the road in Liversedge, I probably won't go watch it. Not because I don't love boxing and I don't love live boxing. I've been to loads of fights, just because that particular fight and the crowds that you get now are just get on my fucking nerves, if I'm honest. So I don't go to the big fights. But in Saudi, yeah, the human rights over there, it's atrocious. I think the wealth's vulgar. Maybe I'm showing myself here now, but ultimately, this is probably something that nobody has said. But you know, when you got Tyson when he fought in Tokyo, Buster Douglas, and you got Joshua and Ruiz in Saudi, there's no atmosphere. There's no fever pitch from the crowd like you get at these other big shows. There seem to be, you know, you get the clapping from the Saudi princes and stuff like that. But when you've just got money who's watching that fight, and let's face it, any fans will go over to watch that fight. I've got a few quid. You know, your average guy who works minimum wage can't afford to go over to Saudi and watch and pay those prices. And you just tend to get the VIPs and the rich dudes over there watching these fights, and you just get the atmosphere on the undercards is awful. You could hear a mouse fart. Honestly, it's terrible. And then when you get the main event, I just think it's a poor TV spectacle, because if you think of when Nigel Benn beat Gerald McClellan, can you remember that? It was almost like they were in your living room watching that fight, wasn't it? The crowd were in the ring. It was intense and it was brilliant. But when you get these fights in Saudi and Tokyo or wherever, it's garbage. It's just like the atmosphere or lack of atmosphere just comes across.
Or America with hot dogs.
Yeah, it's just, you can't beat a lively, awful. You can't beat a lively crowd, can you? You know, I always thought the same thing when Lloyd Honeyghan beat the great Don Curry in 1986, and it was at Atlantic City in like a strange kind of indoor arena, and people were witnessing one of the biggest upsets in boxing history, and there wasn't much of an atmosphere there. I just find it weird, mate, and I think Saudi's a weird place for boxing.
Jumped on him, didn't he, Lloyd Honeyghan, that night?
Lloyd Honeyghan that night was just absolutely amazing. I mean, I know there were rumours about Curry not making the weight and struggling with the weight, and that was in the day that, and I don't mean this to be patronising, that for anybody who's younger, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but fighters used to get weighed on the same day. So they would get weighed, Russell, wouldn't they? They'd get weighed in at 12 o'clock and they'd be boxing the same night. So fighters who used to struggle making the weights before those health checks would literally not recover, and they'd not rehydrate by the time they got in the ring, which is why we got quite a lot of deaths around that period. And I'm not saying Don Curry was dead at the weight, but he had weight issues. And it would be interesting to see if that fight had taken place today with a 32-hour, 33-hour weigh-in, if you'd have seen a different Don Curry in the ring. It would have been interesting. But brilliant performance from Honeyghan. One of my favourite performances from a UK fighter abroad, and Don Curry was technically one of the best fighters I've ever seen.
Yeah. Okay. Now you've just come back from Prague. You've been with Matt.
I have.
What happened?
Listen, it is what it is. We always own it. We're always honest. Max is an absolute working pro. In any other world, any other time, in old money, we'd be just like now, probably having his second or third amateur fight, going into the novices at super heavyweight, boxing at the town hall. But we are where we are. What I will say is, well, you know this anyway, because he's a friend of yours and you've got a lot of time from this, always speaks really highly of you. He's a lovely guy. Whatever he says on social media when he's a bit outspoken and a bit daft, he genuinely has no ego, does he? There's no airs and graces about him.
Soft, cuddly teddy bear.
Big, soft, cuddly teddy bear. the one thing I will say about Max is for all the the opponents aren't great. Let's not pretend they are. Is like I say, he's a working pro. But when I was warming him up, it was the first time because I'd wrapped his hands properly, and he got the 10-ounce gloves on. Usually when I take him on the pads, he's got the big 16-ounce gloves on, and the timing's not quite there. I was warming him up in the corridor. We had to keep moving around because there's no bloody space in that place. And his power, it's evident. He can hit, the lad. I won't want him to tickle me on the chin. We're just doing the under and round, and he's got a big solid jab. And it made a big difference with the 10-ounce gloves on when Max was cracking the pads. I thought he actually has got some zest about him. He's dropped a couple of stone, so he weighed in at about 20 stone, but he was lighter than that because he had to get weighed in with his gloves and it was so carnage over there. They kept saying to us, 5 minutes, you need to be ready in 5 minutes. And we'd already done the photos and the weighing. And I got him ready thinking we're walking to the ring. It was just like Billy Smart's circus. And they said, no, you got to be ready for the photos and the weighing again. You had to do it twice. So Max got weighed in with his gloves on, his T-shirt on, his shorts on, and his boots on.
He had his animal T-shirt on.
Oh, I don't know what bloody T-shirt he had on, to be honest, mate. But so he's about...
Breadcrumb. Breadcrumb ones. Breadcrumb, innit? Yeah.
He looked... Do you know what? He looked about 5% better than he did. I know. He looked about 5% better than he did in his last fight.
Are we part of the problem?
Well, what do they say? If you're not part of the problem, you better be part of the solution.
He was breadcrumb T-shirt on. Bless him. Go on, Mark.
It honestly, do you know what? It meant the world.
It knocked him out.
It meant the world to him. Yeah, the guy.
He looked at game plan, didn't it? Jabbing that, feeling him out, and all that, Julian, all that.
He never really. Max will tell you, he landed a couple of solid shots, but he never really caught the guy clean. I think he just thought, this is a big, strong guy I've got in front of me. This is and he just bailed out. He just bailed out.
Don't tell me he quit. Did he quit?
Did he quit or did?
No, I thought Max
it was one of them. I wouldn't say quit. I'd just say.
But Max is knocking people out now with stairs.
I'd say it wasn't the most heroic performance I've ever seen. It wasn't Jake LaMotta, but Max is a strong lad. And
Max, you pinched a win there, kid. 2-1.
Max is 2-1. He's got a 66% win ratio. So we've got the plan. I've another kid I saw a fight on the bill, and I said, I think ask your promoter. He can pick and choose who he wants. I says, ask Martin to put him with this guy. I says, and then let the guy who beat
Max putting people on notice.
What we're doing now, Russell, is that you got to put this straight. I says, this Pollock will beat you. We got to put this straight, Max, and you got to be 19
also,
stone.
The guy who's done Max, you're going to go after him now. So then Max can go on Insta and say, I've beat everybody I've got in with.
He's going to do a Lennox Lewis. He just said, I beat.
Guiding you, Max. Guiding you.
Max,
Lennox Lewis, Max.
Max Jenkins will be able to say he's beat everybody's faced.
Just like Lennox Lewis.
Absolutely. He did all right, mate. You know what? He'll tell you he suffers from nerves, and he was more relaxed. And the good thing was he was
relaxed on that photo I seen.
Yeah, it was listening. It was listening to certain things, and I always say, look, if you do one thing we've done in camp, and one thing I ask you to do, and you just do one thing only, the result's kind of secondary for me. It's not for Max. Max wants the W, but for me, it's like, do you know what? He's doing what he loves. He's not getting hit by right hands from Deontay Wilder. It's kind of out the way, away from the microscope. So I'm sure at some point Max will box in the UK. But it's a long road. But guess what? Anybody who, and I've been critical of guys who I don't think should be in professional rings, but anybody who has the balls to do that, I always think of the final thing I said about Max's fight, and it's absolutely true. So anybody out there who starts putting all in the comments, feel free, fill your boots, put whatever you want. But there was an ex-pro and an ex-Scottish international amateur who I got to know on social media. He was a really top-class amateur, a guy called John Benny. He won the Scottish ABA several times. And John Benny summarised the difference between professional fighters or amateur boxers and and people who just talk about it and people who just throw insults. And John Benny said the wait in the dressing room 5 minutes before a fight would break most men. And that's how I view boxing. And anybody who's waited for that bell knows that feeling. It's a sickly feeling. You want an ejector seat right there. All boxers face the demons, and deep down you're driving to the venue and you're thinking, oh, I hope he doesn't turn up. I hope he doesn't make the weight.
That was going for you, then, Julian, yeah?
Say that again, Russell.
That was going through your head on way to the arena.
Oh, listen, there'll be one or two people who won't admit it, but you're driving to the venue as an amateur, and it's only when, because I'm quite open about stuff like this, and I talk to other fighters, lads who I see who I used to box with and other guys, and they always say, there's always a part of you that wants that fight to get called off. You're gutted when it happens, but it's just natural because the anxieties are high and the nerves are horrendous. And the weight in the dressing room before a fight breaks most people. And whether Max is a special talent in terms of boxing ability, nobody's claiming that, but he's a special person in that he's got the balls to get in the ring. And I'll give anybody credit who does that, anybody at all.
So we've managed to get him to lose a bit of weight then, huh?
2-1, just under 20 Clem. Let's get into 19. I've told him now, you got to get back and you got to start eating properly, because he does crazy things, you know. The last session before we flew out on the Monday, he just turned up.
Have a Max moment.
Oh, he just turned up and it was flat on the pads, and you want that last one to be something, some kind of sharpness. All right, he's not going to be Prince Naz on the pads.
His sugar levels were it.
He'd just been eating. I just looked at him and I just said, "You've had no carbs today, have you?" Well, I've been working and I've not had time, so I had a bit of fruit when I was working. And I says, "For fuck's sake, Max," I says, "What's the most important part of the sessions you think of a gym, you know, a camp, or if you want to call it a camp, it's not a camp. What's the most important session?" And Max says, "Well, probably the last one." I said, "Yeah." I says, "And you're turning up, you're not even eating properly, you're just eating crap." And fruit's not crap, but fruit's not a performance fuel.
That gym now, he's there. He's up at 5 in the day. He's got a lot on.
He's got a hard life, mate. He's got a long day. He's in the gym 10, 12 hours, and he's driving over to Batley for an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. But I've said to him, you can't make excuses and say, I don't have time, because if you want to be a professional athlete, you got to get meals ready-made, you know, get pre-made meals and eat the right stuff. I says, everything's going against you as it is, Max. Everything, your age, your experience, everything. I says, the last thing you need is to be carrying additional weight into the ring. And you're going to have to get some meal prep, or if there's anybody who can help him, because he knows what to eat. He's got a bloody degree in sports science. He's not stupid. But you're turning up for sessions and you're not taking fuel. You're just eating the wrong stuff. And it's like the biggest part of boxing really is your diet and your nutrition. It's vital, and he's got it all wrong. So hopefully he's watching this and he's listening to it, because I talked to him enough about it. I says, you need to drop the weight, but you got to have some energy levels when you turn up to the gym. I says, because you're never going to get that sharp peak, you know, during those 10, 12 weeks or whatever you've been getting ready. So he's got to change a lot of things, but it's difficult. But you know something, he was over the moon with his win, mate. He was chuffed to bits, and who are we to rob him of his moment?
Yeah, good luck to Max. He's put enough graft in, doesn't he? And you know, he's a tryer, isn't he, Max? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't fault that, can you? And as long as somebody gives me 100% and never moans, never complains, he knows I can only give him a small amount of my time because of various things. And he's going to be spending a bit of time at Nicky Manner's gym and just doing a bit of work with Nick and Colin, because they're really helpful guys, good guys. Just going to help him out with a bit of sparring with some novices, and they won't let him coast. You know, they'll make him graft. But that's going to be twice a week then that he's coming up to Yorkshire, and that's not easy, mate. Is it? When you've got a little girl, you're in a relationship, you got your shopping to do, and 50, 60 hours at the gym to do. It's a hard life, but like I always say, Russell, you know, there's no little violin from me. Ultimately, he's chosen to do it. So you got to do it right or don't do it at all. But he's getting most things right now. Yeah, look, he's never going to be a British champion or a world champion. That's not being cruel. That's just being honest. Yeah, we know that. But what he is going to do is going to be the best version of himself. And he's going to look back and he's going to say, do you know what? I got a lot of stick, but I had a few good nights and I enjoyed them. And even though this weekend's been an absolute disaster from a travel point of view, he's enjoyed the whole experience, and we got a little bit closer. We got to know each other a little bit more. Ben Jennings and his coach was over, who I'm not allowed to name, and they enjoyed it as well. And he had his debut, didn't go his way, but Ben Jennings' fight was absolutely the best fight of the night. It was a war, mate. And whilst there might not have been a lot of skill and experience in that ring, it's nice to see people who just put it all on the line. So it was different for me. There was no Sky Sports cameras, and it wasn't a big bill. It was like crazy. It was like something from the Wild West, but I kind of enjoyed being around it again.
Did you have nose bag on while you were over there?
Oh, I tell you, mate, he behaved, he did all right. I think he had a Chinese last night. I'm sure he said he had a Chinese last night.
Snack that to Max.
That'd have been his starter, won't it? But yeah, he's doing all right, mate. And it's one of those, isn't it?
His footwork was better, you know. You remember when you first had him over there? His footwork, panic.
Well, he didn't have any footwork.
Practicing that Max at his gym, you know.
Oh, just said to him, I says, like you get somebody, you start working with people. I've been lucky that most of the people I've worked with, not everybody, most of them have had a basic level of experience, whether it's an amateur who's had 7 or 8 fights or a guy who's an ABA champion. I've worked with England kids, I've worked with good kids. So you tend to overlook the things like footwork and certain subtleties of boxing. But with Max, it's just like getting somebody walking in a gym who's barely done anything whatsoever. Because these white collar guys, they get coached, but they don't get taught. And there's a big difference. They're in and out. It's a numbers game, and they get an 8-week camp, and they have a white collar fight, and they do it for great causes. But they got zero clue how to box. So Max is totally different for me. So I look at Max and I'm like, I'm not even going to bother with teaching you how to block a left hook and counter with a dip right uppercut. I'm just going to actually show you how to stand. Yeah. And his footwork's getting better. His jab's not bad anyway. I always believe if someone's got good attributes, don't overwork those attributes because you'll deter from it. Just work on everything else. And I did tell him as well, and he knows I don't mess about. For all my quiet demeanor, he'll tell you when it's fighting and training, it's totally different. You have to be in charge. And when Max throws that jab, or when he's looking to throw his right hand, he lifts his chin up and he brings his right hand down. And I just said to him, there's only one rule this weekend. I says, if you lift your chin up and drop your right hand, because I'm going to throw the fucking towel in. And I says, I don't care if you're winning. And he was like, took it really serious. I says, I'm not having you exposing that chin. It's so dangerous, Max. I says, basic stuff. So if you do anything, keep your chin down and keep your backhand up.
Now, can you, Max?
Oh, Max can take a shot. Yeah, the guy actually landed a couple of there were swings, but he landed a big right hand and left hook, and I don't even think Max even blinked, to be honest. So he does.
For putting some shots on Max, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was a strong lad. It was lighter, but it was Max. I don't worry about Max's ability to take a shot. I probably worry about Max's lack of defense when he's doing certain moves. But this is part of the learning curve, mate, isn't it? It takes time. I only get an hour or so a week with him, but I enjoy it, and I think hopefully I'm not putting any pressure on anybody else. But if Nick and Colin can just give him 5 minutes a week, they're good coaches, mate. They've been around the block. They've been at all levels, and they'll be able to add something a little bit as well. And it just gets him in a boxing gym as well, because just training at his own gym and doing a bit of body sparring in a studio and not even in a ring, it's not enough. He needs to be in a boxing gym at least a couple of times a week. He's doing all right, mate. He's doing all right.
Yeah, good. I like to know that Max is all right.
Yeah, and listen, and the thing is, mate, you talked to him, I talked to him, and I also, apart from keeping his backhand up, I said to him, if we get there and there are any surprises, Max, and anyone tries to say, oh, this guy's pulled out and this guy's, so we're coming home. I can't give a shit, mate. I'll just get on next plane back. I says, we're not taking any late notice unknowns, not a chance. I says,
Anybody who can fucking dig, getting in with marks, we want for him, don't we?
Exactly. We were open about it, and I just says these are learning fights. You know, I mean, you mentioned earlier. Look, I know it's a much higher level, 50 times higher level. I'm not naive to it, but you mentioned earlier, Russell, some of the guys in the early days that they brought over for Frank Bruno. This is at a higher level, of course.
John Dennon or something?
Chuck Gardner.
You know, another one, some guy.
John Emmon.
John Emmon, that were it.
The Dutch guy was about 13 and a half.
250 to 1 to win.
And then they brought over Jesse the Boogeyman Ferguson, who were half decent about 300 years ago, and then they wheeled him over, didn't they? They had them all, didn't they? Sammy Scaff, Mike Jameson.
Frankie went life and death with him, didn't he?
Honestly, it's just bizarre, isn't it? It's like, I fought Carl Williams. He fought guys when there were names that we recognised, which was a bit like what they
talked about.
Yeah, it's like just like what they do with Conor Benn, isn't it? I'm not saying that these guys are as far gone, but Bruno fought recognisable names when he'd been exposed by, you know, Witherspoon and Tyson. He came back again. He fought John Emmon, and he started fighting recognisable names like Carl Williams and Jesse Ferguson, and the British public knew those names. Yeah. And it's similar to what Eddie's doing with Conor Benn, isn't it? You know, he's fighting guys who no longer are dangerous, but the public know they are, and they can identify with them, and I guess it's an easy sell.
Yeah, it is. Right. Well, listen. Thanks for coming on, Julian. We've nailed a few things tonight. Give them a bit extra.
Absolutely, mate. They're doing well, and congratulations on
the.
Yeah, and I just want to say congratulations on the 1,000,000 hours, mate. Unbelievable.
Watch time hours. I didn't think I'd get that. No, never thought I'd get
it. Even though nobody likes you, nobody watches you, nobody listens to you, you're not doing bad with 1,000,000 hours, are you, mate?
No, I've got an email off YouTube as well over it. It's no big deal, like, is it? But
you know, of course, it's a big deal. Of course, it's a big deal. Don't deflect something positive, mate. What you've done, all right.
People to come to it.
Listen. People are always prepared to tell you when you've done something wrong or when you get something wrong.
I get a fine on the summons.
Take it, mate. Take the compliment. You're doing fab.
All right, then. Listen, you take care, Julian. Thanks for coming on.
Take care. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later, mate.
Peace out. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, mate.
Well, that was Julian. Thanks for coming on, Julian. That's about it, really. I'm going to go make my cocoa now. Head down. Right. Peace out. Keep on trucking. Keep supporting boxing. Don't have nightmares. And thanks for liking and subscribing and sharing it amongst your pals.